Hey everyone, so I am back with another video talking about Big Brother Canada and ethnicity slash race. And this time I'm going to talk about South Asians, East Asians, and if there are any Southeast Asians. So in my last video, which had Middle Eastern and North African BB Can house guests, I think I stated that I probably got some of them wrong and some of them might be South Asian. So in this video, I'm going to say that I might get some of the people wrong pertaining to ethnicity, especially with the South Asians, and some of them might be Middle Eastern and North African, but it was just not reported. If I make a mistake, please let me know in the comments, and sorry for my mistake if I do make them. And again, since there weren't as many of these categories pertaining people fitting them to make their own video, I decided to put them together. So the first category I'm going to discuss are South Asian house guests, and there are a lot more here than there are in Big Brother US. And it says a lot that the first South Asian contestant they had in Big Brother US was years after Big Brother Canada's first season, and Big Brother Canada came out over a decade after Big Brother. And they put a lot more effort into casting more South Asian people in Canada. So the first person on the list is Aneal from Big Brother Canada 1. So I just remember him instantly being on the outs, and he was very saddened that Jillian, who was someone he thought he was close to, would nominate him. He wasn't close to any of the guys, especially the white ones, and while it seemed like he had a chance to recover in the third week, Emmett convinced Tom to boot Aneal when the twist forced Suzette to be saved. I also remember Suzette randomly snapping at him in the beginning of the week for something he didn't really have much of a part of. It just seemed like he was a fish out of water and he couldn't really bond with anyone, and I don't know if his ethnicity might have played a part in that. So the next person we are going to discuss from the same season is AJ. So throughout the show and the season overall, he was just treated as a complete joke, to be honest. Kind of like Tala, Topaz, and even Gary to an extent were in the season. It's interesting that they did this with the people of color, especially with the edit. Everyone somewhat laughed with him, but also kind of laughed at him, and he was also very under-edited during the season, probably because they couldn't fit him into a specific archetype without laughing at him. AJ was booted during an instant eviction when even the people who should have voted to keep him, aka the Shield, didn't, because others wanted to screw over Topaz, the HOH, more, and she didn't want him to go home. So the next person on the list is Jordan from Big Brother Canada 3, and a lot of people forget that he's half Indian, though his last name, Parhar, is an Indian last name. So he is Indian mixed with white, so I think him being biracial and white passing made it a lot easier for him to blend in with the cast, and his race was never really put into discussion or had any sort of impact, whether it involved his edit or how he played the game. So like I mentioned earlier, I think it had to do with him being very white passing and being biracial, so it didn't have to come into play. Compared to others who weren't white passing and who had their ethnicity and or race very visible. So we're going to move on to Maki from Big Brother Canada 7. And I honestly do not know whether he is South Asian or Middle Eastern, to be honest. I literally did a bunch of research just to find which group I could put him in, but there really wasn't that information that was available to me. I didn't include him in the last video, so I'm going to discuss him here. Either way, he is an ethnic person. He was clearly cast to be the quote-unquote eccentric and somewhat weird guy, which they tend to do quite a bit with their colored men in Big Brother Canada and US. So for some reason, the pretty boys were weirdly threatened by him in the house, despite him not knowing anything about the game, and he would quote-unquote plague the house after he was evicted, which just wasn't a good look. So we're going to move on to Big Brother Canada 8, and because it's Big Brother Canada 8, I don't have much to discuss. And the first person is Nico. There really isn't anything to discuss because his season was a short one, and he was on the block to go home, but quit because he was having a small meltdown. This meltdown might have been due to him feeling alienated and alone, but there really isn't anything else to say. I also think he is mixed with South Asian or Arab, and Hispanic. And he is another person that I didn't know whether he is Middle Eastern or South Asian, and I tried doing my research, but it just wasn't easily available for me to find. So from the same season is Hira, and there really isn't much of anything to talk about with him, but it wasn't really due to his fault, as the season was cut short and he wasn't in any immediate danger. It was so cool to see a man with a turban be embraced in the house and cast to be on Big Brother in general. No one made some ridiculous comment or microaggression or offensive comment about it, so on and so forth. I wish we saw the season play out just so we could see how he could have adapted to playing the game and how people could have learned more from his heritage, his ethnicity, his race, so on and so forth. But we and he unfortunately did not get that opportunity. So we are moving on to Big Brother Canada 9 to discuss Rohan. So he was cast when Big Brother Canada really branched out more on having more racial diversity in their casts and to have more racially diverse casts when they're already doing a pretty good job at that in prior seasons. But unfortunately, they just saw that as casting more black people or people with black ancestry. I don't recall him talking about his experience as a racial or ethnic minority much on the feeds or on the show, but there was clearly some sort of exclusion, since the Black Houseguests and Kiera were close and he wasn't on that side of the house, as he was on the side that had predominantly white people on it. There was the finale where he and Austin were ignored in the package about diversity, which really did cause quite a stir online about how non-black minorities are ignored, not only just in Big Brother, but in the media in general. So we're moving on to Haleena from Big Brother Canada 10, and there's nothing to discuss. She was the first boot, she was very antisocial. The show really brushed over her eviction, and we had no feeds, so there's really no context here at all. And it wasn't like the others talked about her much, if at all, once the feeds turned on. And lastly, we are going to talk about Haleena, and I have quite a lot to say about her actually. So I do remember a lot of people being happy that she was the first Punjabi houseguest to be cast on Big Brother overall, actually. And it was a huge deal since they generally tended to focus on Middle Eastern and North African women when Big Brother Canada started casting. And there really was only Hannah, which happened after the season in Big Brother US. So she was representing a very underrepresented group, especially for women who were a part of that ethnicity. I remember that she didn't get along with many of the people of color in the house, and I remember where there was some sort of split in the fifth week, and a lot of them expected her to vote with them to keep Tanisha, but she didn't, and a lot of them were really mad at her about that for the rest of the season. It did seem like she aligned with a lot of the White House guests in the season, and I don't know if it was partially due to the exclusion from the other people of color in the season, or her just not getting along with many of them. She did state that she felt like she wanted to be white when she was younger, and social media took that and ran with it to insult her and to pretty much call her a white woman or a whitewashed woman. The editing was also very unfair to Haleena, since she was arguably the most under-edited person in the season, especially out of the people who made it halfway through the season, and they decided to give all of the social and strategic credit to Kevin, which tends to happen a lot in Big Brother US and Big Brother Canada. They tend to either protect and embellish for their favorite White House guest, and they tend to under-edit their allies who are people of color in favor for the White House guest. So it was unfortunate that they did that with her, and for someone representing such an underrepresented group, they didn't use that opportunity to build her up as a character and let her tell her story, or have her strategic thoughts and implementations be included. Overall, there needs to be a lot more work done when it comes to the representation of South Asian house guests, and just because they're doing a lot better than Big Brother US, that really doesn't mean much. It also seems like they don't like to distinguish much between South Asian and Middle Eastern / North African house guests, and I think that's something that they need to distinguish more in Big Brother Canada in the future. So for this next category, I'm going to group in East and South Asian house guests together because simply put, there isn't enough of them to talk about. And once again, it's not really clear whether some of them are East Asian or Southeast Asian since the information just isn't really there for me to determine or many people to determine. So the first person we are going to discuss is the first person who was ever evicted from Big Brother Canada in Cat. And honestly, there really isn't anything to discuss. I think she was seen as an overgamer, or at least in Suzette's eyes, when Kat tried to convince Suzette to make a move. But it didn't work out. And that's actually something that a lot of East and Southeast Asian house guests suffer from when they play Big Brother in both countries. They're always seen as too game body, and that plays into stereotypes of them being sneaky or too smart in the real world. So we are going to move on to Sindy, who was on Big Brother Canada 3 and Big Brother Canada 5. I don't know if there's really much of a connection of her race or ethnicity being part of her early boot on both of her seasons, but she was always seen as a game bot in both of her seasons, even when she wasn't doing much gaming at all, especially on Big Brother Canada 5. In general, there isn't really much to discuss pertaining to the treatment of East or Southeast Asians on the show. People didn't really think she could be emotional, so that could be a connection, since there's generally a stigma that Asian people face in that realm. And I already discussed some of the implications of being seen as overtly game body and how that could be tied to stereotypes that Asian people of Southern or Southeastern descent suffer from in real life. So, we are skipping a few seasons to talk about Eddie from Big Brother Canada 7, and it's ridiculous that he is the only East Asian male to have been put on Big Brother in 10 seasons. Not even Big Brother US was this bad pertaining to East Asian men, especially by this point. Overall, there really isn't much to discuss here. Like I mentioned, he's the only East Asian man who has ever been cast on Big Brother Canada. And that stat is extremely pathetic, since East and South Asians are the largest minority groups in Canada overall. But we know that the media and entertainment, especially in the Western world, has an issue with stereotyping them for monetary means or not showing them at all, since they don't really know how, or they feel like they don't know how to market Southeast, or East Asian people, especially when it comes to the men. But in my opinion, that's just due to their ignorance and not wanting to know how to promote Asian men and Asian people overall, no matter what category they fit under. Regarding his game, he didn't really fit in with anyone else in the cast. He got an extremely quiet edit, didn't have much game, and was only known for shading Adam, where he was booted by the man in a quick pre-jury double eviction. So from the same season is Kiera, and I believe she was booted right after him, actually. So once again, there really isn't much to discuss pertaining to her in the season. I know that it was a relatively white cast in the season, and I think there was a sexism issue in the season more than a racism issue, especially with how that played a factor into her journey in the season. She is half Asian and half white, so maybe it was easier for race to not play a part in her journey or whatnot. Honestly, there just isn't anything to discuss here, so I'm just going to move on. So from the infamous and the season that should not be discussed in Big Brother Canada 8 is Minh-Ly, and once again, there isn't much to discuss. I do think she was cast to be the quote-unquote spicy and quote-unquote non-traditional Asian woman, kind of like Sindy was in both of her seasons, and she lived up to that in the house, more than Sindy ever could. I do remember that a lot of the white women did not like her in the house, and I don't know if race, other implicitness, or her personality, or a combination of those was a part of that. In general, there isn't much to discuss with this season outside of that one incident that I went into detail about. And unfortunately, because her journey was cut short and we didn't see how the season would end up, there really isn't much to say here. And the last person we are going to be discussing in the video is Julie from Big Brother Canada 9. So she was the first boot on her season, and first boots are never on their feet, so we never really got to see what happened with her. Apparently, LaToya flipped the house on her for being quote-unquote sneaky and quote-unquote strategic, which some could see as a microaggression, but that's up to them to decide, when Josh was the person sent to go home the entire week up to that point. So, for a country and a show that promotes diversity so much, there's a lot more than they can do pertaining their South and Southeast Asian house guests. And with this diversity quota put into play, they really, really need to put more effort into it. And that's not something that I feel like they've personally done throughout their 10 seasons on the show. So after this, I think I'm going to make one more video where I'm going to combine the Indigenous house guests and the Latino or Latina house guests and discuss both groups in there. And then I think that'll be my final video discussing race or ethnicity and how it played a part into Big Brother. So thank you all for watching, and I'll be back with something soon. Bye!